Welcome to Tech Talk with Trevor Galbraith, a video podcast that features industry leaders and experts from the electronics manufacturing community. Recorded at major events around the world and from the studios of Global SMT TV. Now here is your host, Trevor Galbraith.
Hello and welcome to today's show. I'm delighted to be here to talk today about the eSmart Factory Conference, which is coming up in Nuremberg on May 8th, just one day before SMT Connect. So if you're planning to head to Nuremberg this year, make sure and come in a little bit early for this amazing conference. We've got a great lineup. And here to talk to us about the lineup is two of the technical committee members from eSmart Factory. We have Michael Ford and Thomas Marktscheffel. So welcome, gentlemen. Nice to see you today.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good to be here.
Okay. Great.
Thank you, Trevor.
Yeah. So the first thing I want to talk about, guys, is that we were lucky enough to have Stefan Kronert agree to deliver the keynote speech this year. I think we've got a picture of the abstract here for the keynote speech, but Stefan's very much involved in the semiconductor packaging end of the industry, but he does see a convergence coming between the SMT side and the back-end assembly side, and I think that's going to be the thrust of his presentation. Do you have any thoughts on that, Michael?
I for years, people have been talking about eventually this merging between the two sides of the industry, and I kind of thought about it like the collision of two tectonic plates, because each of these different verticals within the industry, they have completely different ways of working. Different standards, different organizations representing them. But we are seeing this kind of hybrid situation where, part of assembly and part of semiconductors is being put together. So I think that the hybrid business model is probably what Stefan's going to be talking about, because, if you can make that work in Europe, that could represent a whole new type of manufacturing, the hybrid of the two things. Or it could mean the relocation of, certain elements of that, which obviously is very important right now as companies are beginning to do the risk analysis properly and understand that, dependencies on entities that are at great distance or you cannot control is going to be a problem. And so they could seize this as an opportunity to bring these things under control in Europe. So the EMS companies are relatively agile. There is a great opportunity there, I'm sure, and I'd be very interested to hear about how the trust and confidence is going to be brought into the industry that's going to attract this movement of business. So this is going to be a very, very interesting discussion, I think.
Okay. Well, Thomas, I was down 2 weeks ago in Porto with a couple of your esteemed industry leaders, and that was one of the topics that was discussed down there, which is the merging of back-end assembly with the SMT business, both with miniaturization coming in, and there is a lack of OSATs and different these companies already in Europe and in the United States, and so there is a need for some of this capability to be brought in. Do you see that in some of the discussions that you're involved in?
Yes, surely. In the past, electronics manufacturing was mainly putting some components on a printed circuit board, and to a certain extent, as Michael mentioned, miniaturization was just shrinking components to smaller sizes. But since, I would say, 10 years with the starting of the iPhone, for example, more and more chips were embedded into PCBs or modules on ceramic substrate. And with this technology, suddenly pick and place or electronics manufacturing moved a little bit towards semiconductor instead of packaging dies into cases or big packaging. They were directly placed into PCBs, and the technology first glance seems to be quite similar. So instead of picking components, you pick dies. But in a second glance, suddenly you are exposed to much more difficult physics, higher accuracy, and different processes. As Michael mentioned, for example, concerning standards, we're looking at IPC CFX for electronics assembly, and we're looking at mainly semi-standards at semiconductor industries. And now I see a convergence of these two. So, for example, our equipment needs to be able to live in both worlds.
Right, absolutely, I agree. So let's turn our attention now to the eSmart Factory Conference. I mean, it seems to be split into three distinct sessions. What do you think are the highlights for you of this year's program, Michael?
Um, I was at the UK National Manufacturing Summit last week, and seeing how everybody is very keen on moving toward digitalization in manufacturing, and yet not one person actually got up and said exactly where do you get the value? You know, why should we be doing this? Where is the business case? What practical steps can I take? And I think some of the highlights in this conference is, you know, from Arch Systems, who are creating value from analytics, Cyborg, who are able to understand a lot about components as they're being used, detecting quality issues and potential counterfeits. Co-Young, of course, with their automation of their programming and feedback loops. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of great content about how to use data to create value. And we'll be doing a little bit of myth busting along the way, talking about AI. So, you know, one of the key things about this conference, I think, is really understanding the practical approaches to creating that value from data. But there are a couple of other very interesting things. In the second session, we have a presentation about lab on a PCB. This is something that most people will not have heard about at all, and is a technology that is set to create huge volume within the medical industry for little sensors that we basically lick and do a PCR test, very high accuracy in just a couple of minutes for all manner of different conditions, COVID just being one of them, of course. It's a whole step change for the industry as well as for our health. And it's amazing to see that there is sustainability built into this as well. So an alternative material for circuit board that is going to biodegrade. So it's those kinds of things, I think, that drive inspiration in terms of here is something that's genuinely new and taking the industry forward in the future.
Right.
And I think the final thing would be the cybersecurity element that we'll be talking about from a company, Excellence, where this is not just a firewall, it's not just an antivirus, and you use that in manufacturing, obviously, due to the sensitivity of timing. But here is some kind of solution that actually identifies when machines and robot arms hiccup for no apparent reason, detect that pattern and associate it with a cyber intrusion. Very, very clever. And until now, I've never seen anything that addresses these kinds of things on the OT network. So for me, this epitomizes what eSmart Factory is about. You will not have seen these things in a kind of show or event before. It really is innovating for the future.
Exactly. And it's a very unique forum, eSmart Factory. So, Thomas, who do you think is going to benefit from attending a conference like this?
I think all factory managers, as well also as maybe process experts. For me, one important topic is the way how artificial intelligence is moving into electronics assembly. There are a couple of presentations, different things from data analytics, so analyzing process abnormalities, or AI to use for program generation, so automation. I think this will be a big benefit for people who try to automate their factory. And then there are single items like what Michael mentioned, this lab on a chip or cyber security, that by themselves, maybe it's just one single presentation, but it shows how more and more topics are migrating into electronics assembly. So it is serving more purposes than just assembling a printed circuit board.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we've got a really good mix of different technologies we're discussing next week. Now, as I mentioned before we started, I was down in Porto a couple of weeks ago, and I was speaking with Gunther Lauber and asking him about the importance of companies adopting and getting involved in this digital transformation. And this is what he said.
Everybody is talking about digitalization or transformation or digital transformation, however you want to call it.
Yeah.
This is important. This is, in my opinion, if you don't do it, then you will miss out and will not be competitive anymore going forward. So everybody has to do something. There are different approaches. Big companies have their own teams starting to work on it, and they have clear requirements for us, what they want from us. And then smaller companies not having those departments working on this ask us for a complete solution. How can you help us to do the transformation and getting or becoming more digital?
Yeah, and of course, Gunther is now the head of strategy, basically, for the ASMPT group. So what other incentives are there for delegates to want to attend the conference? Apart from the fact that obviously you get to hear some great presentations and you get to mingle with your peers and discuss different strategies and technologies.
I've been to a couple of live events, many more this year than in previous years, and by far the overwhelming feedback is that we say networking, meeting other people in the industry, talking to the speakers outside of their presentations, being able to ask questions and exchange ideas. It's vitally important because I can imagine there are so many factories across Europe where the head guy has said, we want to do digital manufacturing, go do it, go and make me some benefit. And they're thinking, where do I start? What do I do? I mean, it's like, it must be overwhelming for these people. And so they are looking for guidance. And it's very difficult to find that guidance because, a lot of niche kind of presentations, just basically trying to sell something. It's very difficult to put the holistic picture together. But when you get into a room of people with these kinds of experts, then you're able to find out, okay, here are practical ways for going forward. So we'll be talking about CFX, Tom and I, which is, a very, very low cost introduction to being able to exchange intelligent data. And people, I think a lot of people with that topic and many other topics, their mindset is based on what they experienced 2 or 3 years ago. It's not up to date. So even though you may look at the agenda and you may look at the speakers, oh yeah, we know all about that. You don't. You really, really don't. A lot has been happening. And I think being able to come along and ask the questions that you have in your mind. Don't just believe what everybody explains to you. Ask the questions. They're right there. You can talk to them. And I think this is a huge value for attending a conference like this, having so many people with so many different kind of ideas and approaches. I think it's very, very good to talk to them. So this is the real value for me, for a lot of people attending this kind of event.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Thomas, have you got anything to add to that? I mean, it's just...
I think it's this broad spectrum of presentations, a lot of different topics. So there should be something for everyone. And as Michael said, when you get an idea about something new, the experts are on site and you can immediately ask afterwards. And so there's a lot to learn, understand, and then you can talk to and maybe take some connections to work with afterwards.
Yeah, and of course, don't forget at the end of the sessions on Monday, we will be having some drinks and canapes, so you'll be able to mingle socially with everybody that's at the conference and discuss things a bit further. In fact, talking about the hotel does a special conference offer. I think it's 139 euros for the Sunday night. Now that's a very discounted rate. If for anybody else that knows about hotel rates in Nuremberg that week. So you can certainly take advantage of that too. And one final thing, I think also, gentlemen, is that we are going to be having a panel discussion, but we're going to hold that at SMT Connect. I think it's the following day. Is it on the Tuesday? And that is basically to do a roundup of all the technologies and areas that we discussed during the conference. So we'll be taking, we'll be focusing on that at SMT Connect. So anything else that you want to add, gentlemen, before we end here regarding eSmart Factory?
I think that one of the most discussed aspects of manufacturing going forward is the skills transformation. I don't say shortage of skills because I don't believe that really is a key thing, but it's the change of skills that we want to see in manufacturing. So coming along to this event, we're going to see a different approach to manufacturing. Manufacturing isn't getting your hands dirty covered in solder and stuff like that anymore.
Right.
This is kind of going to the next level. And as we bring automation into manufacturing, it's important to understand how to approach, what kind of skills and not specializations so much, but what strengths do people need, and how do we attract them into manufacturing? Mm-hmm. So I think that the two things go hand in hand: the increase in automation, together with the adaptation of the kinds of skills that are needed. So I think that the two go hand in hand very well, and that will be a great topic of conversation during the day across many of the aspects that we present about.
Yeah, it's a very interesting interface, that, isn't it? I think what's having to happen is that the MES systems and the other software packages are having to deliver, a lot of sensible options for what could be causing the defects or the issues on the line, and then the operator has to then, using his assembly knowledge and his skills, to be able to determine which ones are the right choices there. But the software has to take that data and crunch it into meaningful chunks, if you understand me.
Yeah,
but,
I think we will see a lot of automation there. There's more automation coming because we are short of staff, and it's not easy to find enough people. So automation is one key. But I don't think that we will see this lights out factory. So there will always be some people, and they need to get what you said, these data chunks, or they need to get data prepared for the tasks they need to do. And this automation, I think, has to be open. So Michael and I will be talking about CFX. If we want to build a smart factory, it has to be an open smart factory. Everybody needs to be able to participate and connect.
Yes. No, I agree. But by the same token, your operators or your production managers don't need to become data analysts, really. It's the job of the software to present it in such a way that the production manager can understand it and then make an informed choice.
Yes,
exactly. And if you look at the presentations, from ASMPT, equipment vendor, bringing a whole range of value for material management, for example. And then you have Co-Young as the inspection people, automating the way they work and they interact with the pick and place. And then from the software side, there is so much probably of the technology of manufacturing that we all had to know 10 years ago. It's now embedded in the automation. So we don't need to know that anymore. Okay, we need to know of it, and we need to know how to use it. But we need to know how to use it in the way of, for example, Arch Systems analysis of what's going on, to be able to recognize how the patterns are being determined for defects or for productivity and be able to act on that information. It's a different set of skills. And so as we go forward with automation, as I said, we go forward with this new requirement for people working in manufacturing. And to be honest, some people said last week, we need to make manufacturing sexy. And, if that means being able to use some really cool bits of software, whether they come from the machine vendors or software providers, whoever it is, that's cool.
Great, great. All right. Well, it's certainly it's a very vibrant area at the moment and a really interesting area. So I hope we're going to get as many people as we can along to the conference. And I want to thank you, Michael and Thomas, for basically coming in today and telling us a bit more about what we can expect. So thank you very much, and thank you very much to our audience today. And we hope to see you in Nuremberg on May 8th. You can get more information on the website, which is www.esmartfactory.net. So if you sort of want to go online there, then you'll find more information and, of course, be able to register either virtually if you can't make it to Nuremberg, or you can register to attend in person. Until then, I hope to see you in Nuremberg, and thank you very much for watching.